My name is David Maimon, and I'm a professor in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice in the University of Maryland. And my area of research focuses on cybercrime. What I do is I study the human players that drive this phenomenon, specifically the offenders, the legitimate users of computers or the internet, as well as the IT managers. And so today I decided to share with you guys some interesting findings, I think, from a study that I conducted with my colleagues in the University of Maryland, and that have something to do with big data. And that research focuses on public Wi-Fi. In public Wi-Fi users and the traffic they generate for public Wi-Fi hotspots. So a key generator of big data are public Wi-Fi networks. Internet traffic and the packets that travel over these networks could be collected and analyzed using big data analytic tools in order to try and understand how users of those networks employ the network and how they expose themselves to different types of cybercrime. I think that security scholars should spend more time thinking about public Wi-Fi networks, because at the end of the day, they are very good platforms for hackers to use, both for generating attacks as well as attacking public Wi-Fi network users. So the project I will be discussing here today, I envision guiding future efforts to collect big data in public Wi-Fi networks in order to really try and improve security postures of both users as well as the network providers. So the project that I will be discussing here today, its major goal is to really understand what kind of cues could be embedded in the environment in order to nudge public Wi-Fi users to apply both offline and online security behaviors when using the network. In general, public Wi-Fi, as I assume the majority of our viewers know, are really useful and good networks for folks to log in without providing any username or passwords, and very great networks that could be used for pretty much everything. They allow users to log into the internet from anywhere, at any time of day, and most often those public Wi-Fi networks allow folks to do pretty much whatever they want and access any type of website they would like to access using those networks as platform. They're very common all over the globe, and they're heavily used by users who bring their laptops, smartphone devices, tablets, or whatever device that could be connected to the network and used to surf the internet. Because public Wi-Fi networks are, they support the use of legitimate users, the anonymity aspect is very important in this sense. They also support the use of illegitimate users of the internet and allow them access to the internet. Hackers found a lot of advantages of using public Wi-Fi networks. Many hackers prefer, in fact, to use public Wi-Fi networks in order to generate attacks on other computers, because at the end of the day, you can't really track those hackers if they use those hotspots to generate attacks on other computers, on their websites, whatever the target of attack is. So they're very popular among hackers who are trying to generate attacks on the general public, but they're also popular among hackers who are trying to target public Wi-Fi users. There are a few risks that I should mention here in the context of public Wi-Fi. The first is a type of attack that is called a man-in-the-middle attack. In this kind of attack, an attacker situates himself between a victim and the computer that the target is trying to access, and simply route all the traffic through the computer or router that allows him to sort of that allow the target to connect, to the internet. Once doing this, the hacker can get access to all of the information that is traveling over the offender router. And so this is a major risk because sometimes we access servers and access information that we don't really want other people to take a look at. And during a man-in-the-middle attack, attackers may get access to all this information. Another type of attack that is fairly popular and could target public Wi-Fi users is malware. There are a couple of studies and a couple of reports that suggest that malware likes to inject not ransomware, but malware on public Wi-Fi network, and specifically worms. And those worms travel over the network, infect computers, and try to travel to other public Wi-Fi networks as well. So this is the second risk that public Wi-Fi users take when using those platforms for accessing the internet, getting infected by malware. The last risk is a risk that people are aware of but not really pay a lot of attention to, and that is the risk of shoulder surfing. When we talk about shoulder surfing, we're talking about somebody looking behind you to see what you're doing on your computer screen. So, if you're on Facebook or you're dealing with sensitive information on public Wi-Fi network, on Starbucks or any coffee house for that matter, somebody can be, behind you, looking behind your shoulder, taking a picture of your computer screen in order to really get us some information about you. So because of those risks and in effort to address those risks, security experts propose a few ways through which cybersecurity or that users could apply self-protective behaviors when using those networks. The first recommendation by cybersecurity experts is to really apply security solutions when using public Wi-Fi networks. One of the most common security solution that is encouraged by security experts is remote VPN. This tool, once you download it to your computer and turn it on every time you use a public Wi-Fi network to access other websites, simply encrypt the traffic from your computer to the server and make it very difficult for an offender to see the traffic that your computer generates, your computer send and receive. So simply apply a security solution is one way through which you can protect yourself when using public Wi-Fi network. Another way is to protect privacy. Simply look around to see that nobody's behind you, taking pictures of your screen, recording your computer activity, recording your traffic. Well, you use public Wi-Fi network over a restaurant or a coffee house or even in an airport. The last recommendation, this is a really interesting recommendation, I have to admit, that is proposed by several cybersecurity experts, calls for avoiding accessing and providing sensitive information over public Wi-Fi networks. In other words, this recommendation suggests that public Wi-Fi users, should not really access sensitive websites, so to speaking, from public Wi-Fi networks. So you shouldn't really go to your banking account. You shouldn't check your banking account using public Wi-Fi network. You shouldn't really go on Facebook. You shouldn't really go on other websites in which you have to provide sensitive information. And the thing is that they're trying to prevent is from a potential offender accessing or getting some exposure to your data. So these are some of the recommendations that I was able to find out there that some cybersecurity experts came up with in order to sort of encourage public Wi-Fi users to apply self-protective online behavior when using public Wi-Fi. And what interests me is really to discover ways to nudge public Wi-Fi users to apply those security solutions when using public Wi-Fi networks. Okay, but the question is, what do people really pay attention to when using public Wi-Fi, and whether we can use whatever they pay attention to in order to trigger their engagement in self-protective behaviors. At the end of the day, when you use public Wi-Fi, your attention is divided to two environments, the cyber environment as well as the physical environment. And we really need to understand as scholars those two environments and what people pay attention to in those environments if we want to nudge people to be more safe over the internet, particularly when using public Wi-Fi network. And so in our research, we are really trying to find those cues that people pay attention to. And our premise is that people are situationally aware. Okay? People are situationally aware to what happens around them. And, of course, different people will have a different level of situational awareness. Situational awareness, just to make sure that we're all on the same page and respect this concept, is being mindful of the surrounding and identifying potential threats and dangerous situations. The assumption is that if you are aware to the environment, you can respond to it. Your level of awareness will determine, whether you will become the victim of crime or not. And we assume that if we embed different cues in the environment, we can trigger people involvement in an application of self-protective behaviors in cyberspace. Self-protective behaviors and security behaviors have been discussed in the information science literature quite recently, but in the context of the chronological literature, some people talked about, some scholars talked about the value of self-protective behavior in reducing the probability of individuals to experience different types of crime, mainly, I have to say, violent crime. Some of the self-protective behaviors that criminologists identified include beating or scratching or kicking when somebody is trying to attack you, and those kind of self-protective behavior will be considered as forceful resistance. But there are also non-forceful resistance that criminologists discussed when thinking about individual probability to become the victim of crime under specific circumstances. And one of the most common non-forceful resistant behavior that could prevent you from becoming a victim of crime is simply avoiding dangerous situation, running away from environment that may expose you to different types of crime. And so, based on this assumption, the first research hypothesis that I will come up with in this talk suggests that individuals who are situationally aware to the presence of people around them are more likely to apply online and offline self-protective behaviors when using public Wi-Fi networks. So if you're aware to what's happening around you, you will be more likely to apply online and offline self-protective behaviors. When we're talking about online self-protective behaviors, we can think about avoiding accessing websites like banking websites, email websites, and so on. When we're talking about offline self-protective behaviors, we're talking about people concealing their computer screens. And so to test this research question and really try to gauge the level of situational awareness people report in the context of public Wi-Fi environment and in general, we put together a survey. It was a student survey. The aim of the survey was to really understand how individuals make use of technology, their experience with cyber victimization, and any experiences with cyber offending that they had. The sample included 836 undergraduate students in a large American university. And some of the questions that we incorporated in that survey allow us to understand or answer the research question as well as sort of test the research hypothesis we came up with. When we try to understand situational awareness as well as online and offline self-protective behaviors, we put together the following list of dependent variables. In the context of self-protective online behavior, we simply asked students to report whether they check their personal online accounts, such as banking account or email accounts over a public Wi-Fi network, and we asked them to report whether they do that or not. And we also asked students whether they conceal their device screen when using public Wi-Fi network. And again, for this question, it was a Likert scale we used that ranges from 1 to 5, with 1 being never and 5 being always. With respect to our key independent variable in this research, we focused on situational awareness, and we simply asked people whether they are situationally aware to their surrounding when using public Wi-Fi. The score for that item ranged from 1, which indicated not aware at all, to 5, which indicated very aware. And when we ran statistical models, we ran a logic model for the first dependent variable and negative binomial to the second, we found that situational awareness reduces individual likelihood to check personal online accounts over public Wi-Fi, while increasing their probability to conceal their computer screen when using such network. So that is a very important indication that situational awareness play a very important role in determining individual likelihood to engage in both online and offline self-protective behavior. Now, once we understand that situational awareness is key, we try to identify some of the things in the environment that could be used and could be leveraged to push people to be more secure over the internet and apply both online and offline self-protective behavior. So the next question we tried to answer was whether the type of people in the environment matter for the willingness to engage in self-protective behavior. So, what kind of people in the environment, the type of people in the environment will increase the probability of individuals to engage in both online and offline self-protective behavior. So, based on the chronological literature, we believe that place managers will probably play a very important role in increasing folks' probability to engage in self-protective behavior. Think about it. I mean, if you're in an environment and somebody is attacking somebody is behaving violently towards you or trying to rob you, we assume that you will be more likely to engage in self-protective behavior and resist, so use power, if you see somebody that can help you in the corner, like a police officer, or somebody who's working in a specific place. On the other hand, if you look around and you see random people, then it could be that you feel less comfortable engaging in self-protective behaviors because you would maybe think that they will participate and will further victimize you. However, based on protective motivation theory, the threat of the situation and the threat that you feel in specific circumstances will determine whether you will or will not engage in self-protective behavior. If, according to protective motivation theory, you will feel very much threatened by the individuals around you, by the type of individual around you, then you will be more likely to engage in self-protective behavior than if you will not feel threatened by those individuals. So what we essentially tried to answer was whether the percentage of place manager in those public Wi-Fi networks that we all go to really has something to do with public Wi-Fi users' probability or likelihood to engage in online and offline self-protective behavior. The research hypothesis we came up with suggested that the higher the percentage of place manager in a public hotspot location, then either the lower or higher the probability of self-protective behavior being employed by computer users will be. Again, based on the theoretical rationale you're going with, protection motivation or the chronological theories that we are familiar with. So to answer this research question and test this research hypothesis, we engaged in another study. And in this study, what we did was we launched a quasi-experimental one-group post-test only research design in which we sent students to different hotspots locations across the state of Maryland with our own hotspots. The students brought with them their own hotspot. Our hotspot name was UMD private or Davy private. It will depend on the configuration. And what we essentially tried to figure out was whether people would log in to our network or not. If people would have logged into our network, we assume that this behavior will be very unsafe. And so that will indicate that people are not really engaging in online self-protective behaviors in a specific place. Next to situating those devices 3 times a day in 102 public Wi-Fi locations in the state of Maryland, the student we sent also took notes and diagrammed everything that took place in the hotspot location. The students took notes with respect to the number of male and female in the location. The student took note with respect to the way people were sitting next to each other. They took notes with respect to the number of laptops that they were able to see in the premise, the number of smartphones. They took notes with respect to the number of people who were coming in and out. And they put it together in a diagram that I hope you guys can see now. We took all this information and we coded it to our data set really in order to try and figure out the proportion of people who conceal their computer screen in the public Wi-Fi location, as well as the proportion of employees and customer in the locations. This is how we thought we will be able to answer this research question and validate our research hypothesis. So, with respect to our dependent variable, we had 2 dependent variables in this study. The first was simply to identify traffic that was recorded on our honeypot Wi-Fi. The assumption is that if in a specific location people logged into our Wi-Fi and used it, that was an indication of unsecure, unsafe online behavior. So we simply took measures for that. And then we also calculated the percent of computer devices concealed in the location. With respect to our independent variable, remember what we're trying to figure out is whether the presence of place managers in the context of our hotspot, we're focusing specifically on employees. We're trying to assess the relationship between the presence of place managers and online and offline self-protective behavior. So simply calculate the percentage employees in the hotspot and assess the relationship between this key independent variable and our two dependent variable. And what we found was that the percentage of employees in the public Wi-Fi location was highly associated with both online and offline self-protective behavior. With respect to logging into our network, we find that the higher the proportion of employees in the location, the less likely individual were to log into our public Wi-Fi network, to the hotspot that we brought with us. So, higher the proportion of employees, the more likely people were to be more secure on public Wi-Fi hotspots. We also found that the higher proportion of employees in the premise, the more likely people were to conceal their computer screen. So again, this is an indication for an offline self-protective behavior. So higher proportion of employees increases the probability of people to conceal their computer screen and be safer on the network. So in conclusion, we suggest that individuals who are situationally aware of the presence of people around them are more likely to apply online and offline self-protective behaviors. And we also suggest that the higher the percentage of employees in public hotspot location, the higher the probability of self-protective behavior being employed by computer users. Now, the major question is, so what? So what? We find this really interesting pattern. What's the value of it? So I think that big data really gets into this answer in a meaningful way. We believe that if we continue collecting data about what happens in the environment, both the online and offline environment, we collect a massive amount of information of how people are using the network and how they expose themselves to different attacks. We will be able to tie that information with environmental cues, both on the online and offline environment, that will nudge them to be more secure over the internet when using public Wi-Fi network. Now, in the example I gave today, we used information from 800 students as well as 102 public Wi-Fi locations. But I think that if we want to come up with a more effective security policies with respect to public Wi-Fi networks users, how they should use the network, as well as the tools that can protect those networks, we need to generate some evidence that will indicate that those cues are really effective and could nudge people in the right direction. In order to do that, we need to collect more data from more places, use tools that will allow us to investigate what happens over those networks. And I assume that big data analytic tools will be crucial in that sense. So with that in mind, thank you very much, and hopefully you enjoyed my time in this really interesting event. Thank you.